All right, and we're back. So thank you guys so much for the warm reception on the last video. It was really cool to hear that you guys are kind of down with, just more of a casual style making and talking type thing. So as you can see, we got our logo fully sewn on. Someone asked me to keep track of hours for the bag. So this was like 2.5 hours between cutting, burnishing, and sewing everything, just because it's so awkward. So I'd say we're probably about 4.5 or 5 hours in. She's got a couple hours in the straps and stuff too. And it's time to put a few more hours in. So my goal right now is we need to get these corner reinforcements sewn in before we line the bottom. And if you can imagine, so this is our piece, this is our body piece, this is our body piece. The corner reinforcements need to go like that, right? Because then when we fold it, we'll see that. And then on the other side, we'll see that. So I'm gonna cut those out. I think on one side, I'm probably gonna have to almost angle them. It might be kind of cool, angle them around the logo because the logo sits down. But we'll get it cut out first, and then we'll see how it looks. So our bag is 10 inches across on the bottom, but then tapers. So I'm gonna go 2.5 in on both sides. I think that'll be a nice little, almost split it into thirds, but not quite, because I don't want it to be a full third. That made no sense at all, but it'll work out. And we don't have a pattern, so I'm going to kind of talk you through, this is how I used to make everything way back in the day. I would just use a cutting mat, random circular objects to make curves with, and just kind of like had rough measurements in my head.
You still do that.
I mean, yeah, I know. It's a very freeing way to make things because you can kind of like quickly make changes on the go. You can look at something after you've cut it out and been like, I don't think 3 inches is enough for that. I think I got to make it a little bigger, a little smaller. I don't know. It's the way I like to make things. And I don't know how to make big patterns. I didn't go to school for that. So if we look over here, we have a 4-inch flat bottom. And then I think I want it to come up 2 inches on either side, which would mean that we need these pieces to be 8 inches total length. So again, just using the grid on my cutting board, that's all you need. I'm gonna go and make these 8 inches. And we'll probably end up skiving the outside edge, but leaving the inside edge full thickness, again, to match sort of the thickness of the logo application that we did. Doing a thinner exterior will just make it easier to stitch through once, because eventually we're going to have to like sew through like 5 layers of leather and or punch through. And if it's skived down, it'll be a lot easier than if it's all full thickness. It'll also take away a ton of bulk in the finished piece. So now that we have these done, these cut out, we're going to flip them over and do a little drawing and kind of, I'm going to do one first, and then I'll trace it onto the other one. All right, so we're going to basically make our pattern on the piece of leather. So the first thing we're going to do is center is 4 inches, because it's 8 inches. We got to go 2 inches on either side. That's going to get us our flat bottom. Now, on one side, it's going to angle in, right, because we cut, not that much, but we cut our bag at an angle. So on the other side is the side that we're going to do our shaping on. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to, and you could probably use like a wax pen or something to do this too. I just always just use pen, because you're not going to see it. It's going to be stitched to the back of the bag. Half this is going to get skived off anyway. So on the other side, this is the side that we need to pay attention to, because this is the side that's going to be like this. Now this is what here's what I'm thinking. Normally, on this side, I would just kind of do something like this, right? Nice little angle with some rounded corners, but since, I'll make a mark on the workbench here. This is where our flat spot ends, right here on this bag. To go up 2 inches, that's gonna bring us to the middle of our logo. So what I'm thinking is, we do sort of a curve down, and we follow the line of that, of the logo there. I think that would look really, really snazzy. So I guess we're gonna try to do that, but first let's get our other side done. All right, so for the side that's not the curve, all I'm gonna do is use my ruler, or the grid on my board, I'm going to go in 1.5 inches, which is going to be right there, and I'm going to go down 1.5 inches, which is going to be right there, and I'm just going to chop that corner off like that. Then we're going to find something circular. We'll use the top of this, and we're just going to round that off to make it a little more gentle. We don't want like a super sharp transition on this. It doesn't matter what you use, just make sure you use the same radius for both so they match in the end, because they're going to be right next to each other. So there you go. So now it's going to be about like that. So when the bag is sitting down and everything is built, that's what you're going to see as a corner reinforcement. And I like that. It's a pretty traditional little corner reinforcement. Next step is to do this. So to get this side, and this is all over the place a little bit, but we'll get there. I got the pattern for the logo, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to mark 1 inch in and 1 inch. What did we mark on the other side? I'm already forgetting.
2 inches?
Oh yeah, it went all the way down. So it's going to go about to there. So 1 inch over, 1.5 inches down. I'm going to use this curve to get me started. I'm definitely going to have to do some trimming on this once I get it cut to get it right, but this will get us started. So we'll do that. And then again, we'll take our little radius here. You don't always have to use an awl. Sometimes you can just mark with your knife if you're careful, and then go back in and cut it. Okay, moment of truth here.
Ooh.
Is that a bad ooh or a good ooh? All right, so you can see we're a little off. We're getting there, but we're a little off. So now we're going to freehand it in a little bit. It looks like this curve needs to kind of come down like that. That'll fix us up nice. There we go. Let's see how we did there. That's looking good.
Yeah, I like that.
That looks pretty sick. So I'm going to just fine tune this a little bit. This needs to come in just a little bit. And then on the other side, I don't necessarily know if, let's see, we're going there. Oh, okay. So yeah, it's going to pretty much work the same on both sides. So let me get these fine tuned. You guys have heard me ramble enough. And then when we're got both pieces, time to glue them in, we'll come back. All right, so we got this one, and then I cut this one out. It actually didn't take any fine tuning at all. They worked pretty good, which means that this is hopefully pretty centered. That's pretty much what it's going to look like. So you have to imagine you're only going to see that much of it. And then on the other side, if this is too much branding for you, you can just use the plain side. I understand that I'm probably the most excited about this because it's my logo, but I think this is just a nice little detail. It'll incorporate it further into the bag, and so it won't just be like, boom, logo in your face. Now we've got everything sewn in. These came out really sick. So these are going to be our corner reinforcements. So when you fold the bag up, so if you can imagine it sitting like that, we ended up contouring them with the logo. So I think that's going to look really slick. The next thing we need to do is glue this to the liner. We're using very thin Herman Oak Natural Veg. And all I'm going to do is kind of glue everything up. I don't know if I might have to make a mid-video run to the hardware store for some more glue, but I'm hopefully going to be able to get all we need out of what we have left here. When you're doing big pieces like this, start from one end and kind of roll them out so you kind of push the air bubbles out. Yeah, so I'm gonna go get my bone folder and we'll press this all down and stuff and then get it cut out. Alright, so we have our nice natural veg lining, and I'm just going to cut this out first. And you can make this, if you're going to try to make this bag, or a design like this, you know, of course you don't have to line it. If you use a, I don't know what I would use, probably like a 7 or 8 ounce leather. If you're going to do all the other stuff, like do these pieces in like, maybe like 2 or 3 ounce. Maybe the bottom you could do in 4 ounce, but you know, if once you start going up in weights, you're probably not going to want to also line it because it'll just make the bag really heavy. In the last video, we got a lot of comments saying you should do a fabric liner, you should do like a drop-in fabric liner, and I would love to, but we don't own a sewing machine and I don't know how to use one. I am very much a one-trick pony when it comes to leather work, so maybe one day we'll learn how to use a sewing machine to make a fabric liner. I did have the cloth from Corter Leather and Cloth comes from, we used to sell wax canvas tote bags, but I didn't make those myself. I kind of drew them, and then I had a woman who a friend of mine knew, and she would sew them. She had like a little mini factory set up in her basement. With our liner in and everything trimmed out, the next thing we need to do is we need to cut a collar piece. I don't know if that's the technical term, but that's what I call it. And the collar piece is going to be a piece of our brown leather, and it's going to be 1.5 inches wide, and we're going to put it on the inside. You could do this out of the liner color if you want to. I just like adding the body color on the inside. If the liner's different, I think it looks nice. The reason we're going to do that is it's going to add a little bit more structure around the top of the bag. Once this is all together, it's going to be nice to have an extra little 4 ounce support, because all of the this collar needs to support our handles, which is going to support all the weight of our bag. So with that little template that I made that I showed you guys last video, we have about 1.5 inches or about 1 inch trim allowance in our handles. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this collar, I'm going to glue it along the top, and then I'm going to sew just the top seam, because that seam isn't going to be supporting our handles at all. The handles are going to be sewn into the bottom seam and then riveted. Before we glue it in, I'm going to skive the bottom seam so it'll kind of blend a little bit nicely into the bag when you're putting stuff in and out. So we'll just get this guy first. All right, so to get this glued in, I have my calipers set for a little under 1.5 inches, and so I'm going to make a little mark here, and all that's going to do is tell me I can glue on this side, don't glue on this side. Fairly simple. And then we just throw some glue on both and get them stuck down. So I'm going to get this trimmed up. You guys have seen me stitch a plain stitch line dozens and dozens of times, so I'll come back when we're ready to attach the handles. That's more interesting. And so now that we have our second liner in on the top there, it's time to fit our handles. So what I'm going to do is, with the design that I have, I like this end to butt up right to there so you don't really see much. And so I'm going to make a mark kind of on either side, like that. Then I'm going to go over to my cutting board and use this straight line here. Looks like I have to take off exactly a 1/2 inch. So let's flip it around this way. And I'm just going to do that on both so that they're even. So now I know I have to take a 1/2 inch off of both. That. Get my blade here. And so now, when we attach this, we're going to sew this to the bottom seam. And we'll flatten it out as we stitch it, but you can see we have a nice tight fit down here. We'll put a rivet in here, and it'll be really, really solid. So we can just take a 1/2 inch off the other one. I'm going to do them on, actually, I'll do them on all 4. And I just do these freehand because it's kind of weird. It's already kind of weird to like get this ruler in here to make this line. So I just always kind of figure like it's a shortcut. So freehand is just easier. But with the freehand cutting, it takes a lot of practice. But then eventually you get it pretty good. And then we also have been developing these solid brass blade holders, and they're a lot more weighted than a normal aluminum one that you'd buy at the store. So eventually they'll come out. We're almost done with them, and these are going to be, I think you guys are really going to like them. They're just, it takes a little getting used to with the extra weight, but the control it gives you is like really, really nice. And so once this is done, we just got to burnish up these new edges that we created, and then we're ready to install it. So once we have everything trimmed, what I like to do is I'm going to pre-punch everything. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start by marking everything out, because we are going to have to use, I'm sure there's a different way to do this, but this is just the way that I do it. We are going to have to use a diamond awl to get these little pieces in here punched. And they get like, this is, my patterns just aren't like fully formulated yet. I've just kind of been developing this stuff because honestly I didn't make a lot of this stuff for a long time, and kind of lost all of those assets, all of my little pattern pieces. So I've just been reformulating, and as I need them I'll design one and make a file on the computer that I can just print off as I need it. But for now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use my 2-prong awl, and I'm going to mark up the side. So I'm going to mark 7 holes on each side, and that way I know they're at least even. 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the way we're going to punch this is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to punch as many holes as we can with our stitching irons, because that's the easiest way to do it. Then we go up to the sides here. Don't try to push it if you're going to do this like this. Get as many as you can, but once you get to the sides here, I'll show you how we're going to do that. It's actually super easy. Once you get a little bit of skill with a traditional diamond awl, it really kind of opens up a lot of opportunities for like where you can poke holes and stuff, which is like kind of an odd thing to really push, but or to emphasize, but it really is kind of cool. So we know we have the same amount of holes on each side. We just need to get them punched. So I'm going to take my diamond awl, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and make sure that the diamond, or that the shape of the awl is matching my stitching holes that I've already punched. And I'm just going to kind of carefully go through. You can see it going through there. And there's my hole. And that allows me to get through there and get all the way up. And again, I know if I had a better pattern, I could have just done this when it was flat, but I do not. So this is a good alternative. It also works if you're just kind of doing these off the cuff like I am with no real pattern. We're just going to punch these through. Again, making sure that we're holding the awl so that our holes are the correct slant to match everything else. And then we're good. We have all of our holes in here. This looks kind of ugly because it doesn't need to look nice. It's going to be mounted on the back there, but this curve here is what we're going to see, and that should be really nice. And then of course, once we're done punching, we're only going to stitch this bottom seam to the bag. So I'm going to go through and stitch up all 8 of these little sided pieces beforehand. Those are, you probably don't have to stitch these sides up if you don't want to. But I like it. I think it looks like a much more finished product. So we took a little detour. We have this like cheap stamp set that I got on Etsy a long time ago. I don't use it much, but we made a couple. This takes forever because if you're ever going to buy one of these, buy one with the display case that shows you where everything is, because we just have to like sort through letters for 20 minutes. But I decided to make a little like placard thing. It's going to hang. I'm just going to lift up this seam on the opposite side and it'll just hang underneath inside the bag like that. I think that'd be really nice. 500,000 subscribers, one of one, custom bag with our logo there. So with that done, what we're going to do... Oh, and I also think Weaver sells stamp sets like this that are really nice with the case. I think we have some on order, so we'll see if those come in. That's probably where you want to get them. These are okay, but they're kind of all over. It takes a lot of time to use them. So I'm going to go put these away, and then we're going to get everything attached together for hopefully the end of this video. So the extremely scientific way we're going to attach these handles so that they're centered is I'm just going to count my stitch holes. So I'm going to sew 5, and then I'm going to bring in the handle to be the 6th hole, and I'm going to just do that on both sides. So it's pretty simple. You can obviously glue them in and do all that stuff, but since we're going to rivet them, I'm not using any glue. A, because it makes the job easier to do, but B, because with the rivets you don't really need any glue. So that's 2.
That's the window there.
Yeah, sorry. We have a window right here and I'm kind of tall, so I just punch it every once in a while accidentally. 3. Oh, there's a bunch of dog hair. Using long thread, sometimes it drags on the ground and picks up. Shows how good I am at keeping things clean. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to bring in our handle to stitch on for the 6th hole. So we're going to put that right there. And it's a little dicey holding on to it at first. But once you get a couple stitches in, it's not hard. And like I said, if you want to glue it in or do something different, by all means, go for it. And then just make sure that this is on here. And I like to do, I'm always conflicted on double stitches. Because on one hand, they kind of look cool and they definitely add strength. But on the other hand, when you have a piece like this, where you're kind of inclined to do a double stitch on either end, because you're like, oh, that's obviously stress points. Well, they're not really stress points because the whole thing is going to be sewn in. There's going to be a rivet. So I suppose you don't really need them, but we're just going to do one, just to be better safe than sorry, I suppose. And then once you get a couple stitches in, it's fairly easy to just sew across the whole thing. This is going to be a little bit dangly. Remember, we are going to put a rivet or 2 in this handle somewhere. I haven't really figured out the design yet. If you've been following us on Instagram. Oh, so remember, we're going to give this bag away on Instagram. And if you've been following us on Instagram, you've seen I've been kind of messing around with like rivets that are structural, but also doing them in kind of a decorative way. Spent my whole career making like utilitarian stuff that's very minimal and just functional on purpose. And recently I've wanted to make more sort of designed stuff that has a little bit of a personality to it. So I've been playing around with that kind of thing. So once we get these sewn in, we'll go through a couple options and see what we like best for rivet placement. Of course, we don't want to get too busy because we already have a whole lot going on the front of this bag. But it's probably going to come down to like 2 rivets or 1, something like that.
You didn't burn it.
I didn't burn it at all. Ow, burned my finger real bad though. I do that 100 times a day. Why did I give... So now, before we do the other side, I'm gonna place the rivets on this side, and this might look a little sketchy. I guess it kinda is. But I just do it by hand, or like by eye, so I'm kind of centering and making a mark. And then I'm gonna take my ruler and bring this, and I'm not measuring, I'm just using the ruler to make sure that this is like parallel. And then I'll go in here and place that, and then kind of eyeball it. And you could go in and be like, and check a little bit. We'll go metric here. So that is 15 millimeters from the edge. And that is also 15 millimeters. So we pretty much nailed it. Nice thing with this leather is it kind of like dents a little bit because it's soft and then it just rubs right out. So let's punch holes for these and get our rivets in so that this side is pretty much completely done. Then we'll replicate it on the other side. And now we have, I'm just going to use some antique brass pop rivets to go right in there. It'll be nice and clean, nothing too crazy, and it'll hold it nice and snug. So let's go with a little wonder and set these before we do the other side. So this, our little plaque here is a little late addition to the other side. So we already glued this down, but I'm going to, if you're really careful, you can get it with a bone folder without having to do any cutting. The only thing I want to be careful of is I punched all the holes. So I'm going to take this back a little further than I need it to, and we'll re-glue this before we sew it. But the only thing I want to be careful of is that I line up the stitching holes when I put this in. So I've marked, I don't know if you can see it, I have a little center line there, which is the center of this piece, and a little center line there, which is the center of this whole thing. And I'm just going to line up those holes, and then this will come down tucked underneath, which is why this has kind of a big seam on the top. I suppose you don't really need to re-glue this if you don't want to. The stitching will hold it pretty well, but I want it to be as nice as I can make it since we're giving it away. So let's throw a little tiny bit of glue in there, a little tiny bit of glue here, and we'll get this all buttoned up. And so I kind of shoved this in here, and I used a needle to make sure that the holes lined up. And then I'm just going to tuck this back down. It's all glued, and we'll hammer this down. And it'll be like it never happened. And this is an important thing as you're kind of, it's kind of like a freestyle bag build because I don't have a pattern or anything. And it's one of the things watching Kaylina sample her own bag designs that I've learned, because I was always very regimented with, like, I'd make a pattern, or once something was sewn in, that was it, and I would have to make changes on the second version. But Kaylina takes up seams and stitches because she comes from more of a fabric background, and it's interesting to watch other people work because now I've started to do that, and you don't have to worry about just popping up a seam and gluing something in, and it looks like it was always meant to be. So now we have our second handle. We're going to do the same thing. Go in 5 stitches, attach the first handle, stitch, attach the second handle, and rivet it together. And here we go. So we have, let's see, we got both the handles on, riveted, everything stitched. Our liner's in, our little plaque is in here. It's starting to look like a bag. So we got a lot of stitch in this video, a little bit of me running my mouth yapping a little too much, but we're making really good progress. And believe it or not, I know it looks like a really fancy log carrier right now, but we're almost done with the actual body of the bag. So next week, the goal is going to be to get the gussets in, which are going to come out pretty far. They're going to come out about 4 inches, maybe a little bit more. So our bag will have this shape, and we'll get all of the hardware installed for the shoulder strap and all that stuff. Maybe we'll get started on the shoulder strap, but I think I want to make like a dedicated video to making shoulder straps because that's a very universal thing for pretty much any bag. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, 500,000 subscribers, such a cool milestone. It's been really fun to just kind of take our time and make less formal, chatty videos. It was great talking with you guys in the comments last week about the bag and projects in general. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, we have some shop news, so I'm gonna film. I stole the camera. I'm not very good at filming, so put everything on auto, and we're gonna see how it goes. So this is a vehicle-related update. This is my truck. We use this for everything in the business, in the shop. It's a decent truck. It's set up mostly for like beach driving and stuff because we live on the Cape. And the big issue that we have is when it rains, we can't ship big boxes because I don't have a cap or anything. And it's not super comfortable. So we ship everything to fulfillment. And then when you guys order from the website, fulfillment ships stuff to you guys. So I was in the market for a van. Now, me and cars, if you've been following me for a while, you know, like I built an 89 Volkswagen Synchro. I've had an 81 Jeep, an old Jeep Scrambler, an old Montero. I've only had a couple cars that were younger than me, right? This being the newest car I've ever owned. Look at what we got for the shop. That is a 1994 Ford Aerostar LTX Eddie Bauer edition. And not only that, look how clean it is. One owner, dealer service for 27 years. And it is all-wheel drive. It's got a V6, I think. Might be an inline 6. V6, a 4-liter V6 with a 4,800 pound towing capacity. And it's clean as a whistle. There's like no scratches, zero rust, which is New England. Forget about it. I've never seen a car I've never owned a car this clean at all. It's like too nice for me. But I wanted to show you a little bit around it because it's like not only a time capsule, but it's what most of your orders are going to be brought to the post office in from now on. So inside, for a 94 van, the options are like nuts. So first thing you see, you get this beautiful Eddie Bauer 90s motif on the seats. And then it has like the third row seating that turns into a bed. And it's got like cruise control and AC, and like my truck, I just got the AC fixed. I haven't had AC in a car for 7 years. So that's going to be a nice treat. Let me show you the dash is the craziest thing to me because it's like the most 90s thing ever, and I love it. It's like straight out of the Matrix. So this was like a dealer option, digital dash. So good. 84,000 original miles. It's got like a 21-gallon gas tank, so you have a 400-mile range, which is kind of wild. I don't know. I love it. Cassette tape player. Not only that, cassette storage. If any of you guys ever had, well, let me close this. If any of you guys ever had a family member with the Ford from the 90s, these coin things, you take a turn, all the coins go flying out everywhere. Cup holders that are an inch deep so they don't do anything. Full EQ for the stereo that I'm sure will be great to play around with. It's pretty sick. I'm a simple dude, you know? Good, clean 90s van, not a lot of computerized stuff. This is the move for sure, especially all-wheel drive. So yeah, one last look at the dash. We'll turn her off. One last look at the outside. Apparently those fog lights were a dealer option. That's pretty sick. So yeah, figured I'd share a little shop news with you because we don't really ever do anything except for, you know, leather projects, and we are a fully functioning business. So, you know, we got our new shop van. So that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching again. Share your love for old funky 90s vehicles that were designed after spaceships in the comments. We can talk about them, and we'll see you guys next week.